We are back to recap another week. Week 3 is in the books, and I'm excited to talk about what I saw from your league. I actually peeked through. My team actually had a dud of a week, so I was trying to distract myself and peek through your league as it went along, and there were some good games, so happy to talk about it and give my opinion, again, as if they are fact, about the matchups this week. So to start off, I'll let you know the order we're going to do the matchups in case you only want to see your part, but hopefully you do want to see the whole thing. The first game was Team the Prophet against We Went With Jared. Second game was Pain Train versus Pack to the Future. Then we got El Capitan and the Chairman, the Banditos versus the Professor S, and still catches up Chris down. I really don't know what that name means, versus Straight Knockout. So to start off, Team the Prophet versus We Went With Jared was a pretty good game. Team the Prophet got the win to go to 2-1. A lot to actually say about this team because there are some moving pieces here. Obviously, Mahomes is a stud and he played like it. The very interesting piece here is the running back position for this team with Montgomery and Singletary. Both two guys who are solid guys, but their ceilings exponentially have went up in the last couple of weeks. Mainly Montgomery is on a more permanent level because Montgomery, as I'm sure you're all aware, Tariq Cohen tore his ACL, and now the Bears are going with Foles. So Montgomery, to me, he got 7.4 here. That sounds pretty right for what he would normally get. You probably average around 10 to 12 points in his current role. Maybe be a little more touchdown dependent to try and get 20 plus, but currently, with those injuries and the change to the quarterback, Montgomery is a guy who really could average almost 20 points for the rest of the season. And I think he's going to be an absolute stud. So I think this team just already 2-0, already doing well. I think that it just took a huge step up with the Montgomery change here. Singletary, on a similar note, very much benefits from Zach Moss being out. So with Zach Moss out, Singletary had a good game, 16.1. I think Zach Moss might be week to week. I need to look up in on that a little bit more, but as long as Zach Moss is out, if he's going to be out for longer, Singletary also takes a huge step up. So your running backs just went from to pretty strong. So that's obviously good news for Team the Prophet. The only other piece to note here is depth. Again, I'm going to be giving advice as if you should do it. It's just my opinion, but maybe, I don't know. We'll see. With Saquon out, your team, you were able to plug in those running backs and be in a better position now, but that also means that by plugging in those good bench running backs, you now have no depth from my perspective. So what I would do if I were in your position is try and get value for Aaron Rodgers, who got 32 this week, absolute stud. I think it's great to have a good backup quarterback, but even though Mahomes got injured last year, I mean, you can't bank on an injury. I wouldn't keep that depth on the bench if you could get someone for him. So if you could upgrade that running back position, because even with Montgomery and Singletary, that's still not, compared to other teams that might have like really tier 1 guys, it's not super strong. Consider maybe trading up to upgrade there, or maybe just your flex position. I actually really like Will Fuller this year, but with those 4 wide receivers, they're all pretty solid, but could certainly use an upgrade. It's just a team that doesn't really have tier 1 guys, like those top 5 at the position guys. You really have none of them. So at any position except for a quarterback for Mahomes. So that's something worth considering. But that's a Team the Prophet, obviously in a good position, in a better position than they were a couple weeks ago as well. So 2-1 versus we went with Jared, who was 1-1, but now has just gone to 1-2. With 151 points, so not an awful week, but lost by 27. It wasn't too close at the end with Mahomes' strong game. The reason I almost don't want to talk about this team, and I'm not going to talk about it as much, is because you went with Julio to start, and he did not play, and there was indications coming in that he wasn't going to play. So it's not like, it happened at 9:59. I'm on the West Coast. If it was you guys like 12:59, I just wasn't able to change it. That is very disappointing. Maybe I take fantasy too seriously. I probably do. I definitely do. 100%. No one's doubting it. But that's just egregious to me, and it's tough to give my heart in an analysis to a team that plays Julio. Let's assume it was an innocent mistake, or you have actual important things happening in your life, which is also very possible. But I think this team should be, outside of what I just said, this team should be a contender. This team has a really strong team. Versus the other team we were just talking about, actually, this has a lot more tier 1 guys. I mean, at running back, first you have Russell Wilson, so your quarterback's almost as good as Mahomes, maybe just as good this season. Zeke and Chubb are both tier 1 guys, so that's 2 more tier 1 running backs than the other team has. We were just talking about. And you have Julio and Allen Robinson, who, honestly, I still think Julio is going to be very, very good this year. I think Matt Ryan's looking pretty solid. I think that offense needs Julio. I think that the defenses can't overly plan to cover Julio in the way that they did in previous seasons, because Ridley's really stepping up. Gage is stepping up. I was going to say Hurst is stepping up, but he's a little iffy. But even with that, I think the opportunities there for Julio to still be a tier 1 wide receiver. And Allen Robinson, who's normally a tier 1, tier really 2 wide receiver, with Foles is a tier 1 wide receiver in my opinion. He's unbelievably talented. He got 13 targets this week, caught 10 of them. He's a target machine. I think he led the league in targets last year, or was top 3 or something like that. So that's a really good situation for you. I guess the only question marks here are the depth at wide receiver. Just, I hate Landry. I think I said that last time, but I hate Landry this season. Really think it's a bad option for you. Waller had an off week, but he'll always be good. John Brown also pretty questionable. I think he got banged up also, but I think in general, people are saying he's really underrated. I don't see so much value in Brown consistently. Your bench is decimated, and you have basically no one healthy. So I would certainly make some adjustments. I mean, that's not my opinion. Like, obviously, you have to make adjustments because you have too many guys who are hurt. Tariq Cohen's going to be, obviously, you're releasing him, so you're going to be able to get someone, but you just can't. Maybe you didn't plug in for Julio for anyone because you didn't have anyone on the bench, but it's a bit of an injury mess. But this is a great team. I think it could be a contender as long as you play people who are playing the football game. So the second game was between Pain Train and Pack to the Future. This was a lower scoring game. Pain Train got the win to go to 2-1. So yeah, it was actually the only team he could have beaten. And I know I keep saying he. I need to correct myself on that because I don't know what the league is composed of. But so they actually got the win to go to 2-1 against the only team they would have beaten. They continue to show the strength at running back. Aaron Jones, Dalvin Cook, second best running back corps in the league, probably to the team I just talked about. Incredibly lucky with Mike Evans, who only caught 2 balls and only got 2 receiving yards, but got 2 touchdowns. Yes, in my league I was playing against him. It was glorious. But I would say you don't blink. You have to keep playing Mike Evans. I don't love him this season, but you have to play him, and mainly now Godwin's actually injured. I believe he's going to be missing a game or 2. So Mike Evans has just taken another step up because I think that was really necessary to get Godwin out of the way. I think Mike Evans, that offense already has so many people to go to, and Brady doesn't have the strongest arm. So you need to, with Mike Evans, I think having Godwin gone is a great thing. Whereas on other teams, maybe it's like, oh, having another good target is really good for me. I really think Mike Evans is going to take the next step up without Godwin. Metcalf, bad luck with that fumble. You still got the win. That would have probably killed you if that cost you it. But Metcalf looks incredible. That's good news for this team. Tough game for Higbee. I really like Higbee this year. Again, just my opinion, but I think you have to keep going with him. I think he's much better than Hawkinson. He did get a 2-point conversion, which is very reflective. 2-point conversions are basically goal line type plays that will be touchdowns also. So for me, I always love seeing my guy get a 2-point conversion, not only because you get 2 points for it, but Higbee's just clearly a guy who's going to continue getting touchdowns, and he will get volume despite his only 2 receptions on 2 targets this week. I would say I just wanted to take note of that because I think Higbee had an off week for you and you were still able to win. A lesson we learned, I don't know what you did to get Devontae. I don't know if you had to use a top waiver claim. I'm not even sure how the waiver claim in this week works. And if I continue to do any of these in the future, I'd actually want to probably hear about how it works so I can give more insight. But what you did learn is that Devontae, how did you get Mike Davis also? Those are 2 top guys from the waiver wire this week. I'm surprised. Last 2 weeks. Anyway, Devontae Freeman showed you that he's not worth having. I think you probably should roster him to see if anything happens in the next couple weeks. But Giants running backs, I don't have this stat exactly right, but I'm trying to remember what I saw earlier today on Reddit. I think 40 carries or 50 carries this year for 72 yards or something combined. That includes Saquon. If you watch Saquon in week 1, he was spinning and jumping over people just to get 0 yards. That is an awful, awful running game. I don't think you should ever start a running back on the Giants. So, again, I don't know how it works in your league, but I would have to imagine you, unless it's a week where it just refreshes every week, a waiver system, I'd have to imagine you that was not a signing that you feel super confident about right now. I would continue to hold, though, but I wouldn't view that as a depth guy, honestly. Mike Davis, I would view as a depth guy. Honestly, kind of surprised you didn't play Mike Davis, but I guess you're pretty stacked at running back, so that's not on you. Maybe this is a team, if someone's looking for a running back, which I know teams are, maybe there's a team you want to talk to. The last thing to note here is T.Y. Hilton. I would continue holding him. I actually think T.Y. is still going to be good. I think I'm the only one who thinks this because on whatever I see Reddit or online, like everyone's bashing like, oh, Phillip Rivers does nothing for T.Y. I think they're going to figure it out. I just have it's a gut feeling thing. But anyway, I think you do have depth because of what we just talked about, Mike Davis and T.Y. Anyway, on the other side of it, Pack to the Future with the loss going to 1-2. Concerns about Kenyon Drake. It's just a head scratcher what's happening there. I think it makes sense because it's a pass first team that also has the quarterback who could run. So that situation for running backs isn't great. But Kenyon Drake got 18 carries, but he's never really able to turn it into much. And the major concern also is in the passing game, only one target, which you would expect much more for Kenyon Drake. He definitely has the ability to catch the ball. So that's concerning for this team for sure, because that's your tier 1 running back. You got a tier 2 or 3 running back in David Johnson who got a touchdown, but 13 carries, 23 yards, also concerning. The good news here is that the schedule for the Texans early on was super, super difficult those first 3 weeks, whereas the next 5 weeks, I think, are against run defenses that are pretty weak. So I also think David Johnson's going to be stellar. I think the Drake Johnson thing's actually going to work out for you, although right now it looks a little bit like, oh, I might be screwed. A wide receiver, I don't love some of the decisions. I think we got kind of cute here with Traquan and Cole. I know they both had a decent amount of hype due to other injuries, but I never liked those wide receiver situations. I don't think we could ever assume oh, this guy's hurt, now this guy's going to get a ton. In the same way we can do running backs. I think this team leaned a little bit too much on that, and I think that's actually the main cause of the loss, is that Traquan and Keelan Cole start. Neither of them did awful, 8-9 points. It's bad, but it's not like they put up a 0. And you didn't have great other options, but I would say that's a position that you certainly want to get fixed a little bit, or at least make better decisions at start for who you start. But with that being said, you do have a ton of depth at wide receiver. The feedback would be, oh, we need studs, and I think you're about to get 2 studs back. Michael Thomas, who I still think is the top 3 wide receiver in fantasy, starting next week once he gets healthy. I think he's going to be in next week. I think reports are showing that. So that plugs in that first spot. And then Deebo Samuel, watch out. This is the value guy of the draft this year. I think he's an absolute stud, and I think he's going to be incredible in that SF offense. I would wait. He's not going to play probably week 4. I think he's set to return in week 5. I would also probably not start him the first week back. Even though I love him, I just would hold back. But I think starting week 6, having Michael Thomas and Deebo in there, this team is going to be really, really dangerous once those 2 guys come in. You pair that up with DeAndre Hopkins, that's scary. You got Jonathan Taylor at flex. I love this team. And I love that you didn't start Mark Ingram. I don't know if I said that last week, but I would. I'm doing this for fun for a few different leagues. Not for fun. I'm getting $10. I'm not getting much money. Don't worry. This is really just for fun. But I'm doing it for a few different leagues. In every league, my point of emphasis is how overrated I think Mark Ingram is. So I'm happy that I'm getting some confirmation on that. Obviously, I have confirmation bias, and I'm sure he'll get 40 points next week just to make me look dumb. But love the bench of Mark Ingram. I think your 3 running backs that you're starting are much better, even though they're not being super successful. Mark Ingram tonight only got 3 points. So. Yeah, so with that, you're at 1 and 2, but it's a dangerous team. I think this team certainly is going to be able to compete for a playoff spot and position. The next game, El Capitan versus the Chairman. Okay, so this was our first done chain of the season, El Capitan, when he was 0-2. And unfortunately for El Capitan, unfortunately for me and my pride, another loss here brings you to 0-3. It's looking real bleak for El Capitan this week. Really close game, only lost by 1 point, and these are the games where all of us are just like, what other decision could have I made, or what else could have happened in this game that would have just gave me that 1.8 points that would have been enough for the win. So I definitely empathize and feel bad for El Capitan on this tough one to go to 0-3. The bright spot is Darrell Henderson had a good game, and he looks really good. 20 carries, 114 yards. He looks like the main guy for LA. So as we said, I think I said last week, Cam Akers I don't really like, Malcolm Brown I don't really like. If there's a guy to own, it's certainly Darrell Henderson. I would still be a little hesitant just because there's going to be other 2 guys involved with health, but he's the most talented running back in that backfield for sure. I also think I talked about Kareem Hunt. I really don't like Kareem Hunt. He got 14 points, so pretty decent day, pretty solid day. But that was it, getting in the end zone. For that to be your 1-2 running back punch is fairly concerning. I'm trying to remember who. Didn't you have someone on the bench? Just want to remind myself. You don't, because McCaffrey got injured. So this is the worst running back team in the league for sure. We already done chain. So I'm not gonna go as hard as I should on this team. A lot of concerns. If I'm this team, I trade Kelsey for some. First of all, how do you bench Godwin? How do you bench Godwin for Valdez-Scantling and AJ Green and CeeDee Lamb? CeeDee did okay though. Okay, sorry. I'm sure this person's like super nice, and I there's always a way to recover. I done chained, but I'm rooting for this team to be very clear to recover, and there are pieces. Great quarterback situation. If I'm this team, I trade Kelsey. I start Godwin every week. Now he's hurt, but start him every other week. And I maybe trade Kelsey to a team who really wants a top tier tight end, and maybe just get a really solid couple guys at wide receiver or running back or something like that. With that being said, 0-3, we already Dunchained. We're putting a second Dunchain on it. And I've never double Dunchained, so that's tough. The other team had the opposite side of the story, got lucky with the 1-point win, and goes to 3-0. So on the flip side of 0-3, is the chairman. The not great thing here is the wide receiver position. I really don't like any of the wide receivers that were started this week. McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, and Humphries. Deontay Johnson and Humphries are a whole other story. Johnson has an upside kind of look to him, but I just don't like that situation long term. I understand the start, and I think even last week, after he had a good game last week or the week before, I was like, okay, I could support it, but it freaks me out a little bit to have to rely on Big Ben, who's still, in my opinion, not one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league with his age. He just looks a little rocky to me, although he can be productive. But he just so clearly loves Juju so much more than Deontay Johnson. It's just too much of a risk. And then Deontay obviously got hurt, so that's probably, I should be talking about that more than when I'm talking about the other things. Humphries, I don't understand at all. I don't get that start. I don't know the storyline. This isn't to be critical. I don't understand. I didn't even know he was a fantasy option, so I'm sure there's a storyline of like an injury in that receiving group. A.J. Brown, I think, might have been hurt. That must have been why. But I didn't even know Humphries was an option, so I shouldn't even speak to it. I'm sure there's some upside there. But since I didn't speak of it, I'm guessing that it's not enough to probably be a long-term start situation. And then McLaurin, you have to keep starting, and I think he's unbelievably talented, but Dwayne Haskins is a disaster at quarterback, in my opinion. I think they have to start a different quarterback at some point, give up on that experiment soon. If that happens, McLaurin's going to be even better. Is there anything else to talk about with this team? Yeah, I guess when we talk about the wide receiver position, you have so much depth. I get benching Galladay. It'd be easy for me to go hindsight and say, well, it'd be really easy for me to say Justin Jefferson playing, but no chance I would have told you that before this week. There's no way to predict that he would have that week. I still would be wary about starting moving forward. I would probably wait another week, but if he gets another 8+ targets in the future week or gets 100+ yards, maybe he's a every week starter. It's just a run first offense that he's not the first option, so I don't really like that situation. Galladay, I also understand the bench because of his injury, and he was questionable, so he could have easily been a decoy. I don't think he got a catch for like a while into the game, so that's fine. And Devontae Parker, I think, is also a good option. So you have depth at wide receiver. None of them blow me away, but the depth is there. So yeah, this team to me does not look totally like a 3-0 team. I'm going to say that also about the other 3-0 team that I saw in the next matchup. But it's obviously a very solid team, and if you get that wide receiver position right, you're going to be in a much better position. This would be a good team to trade with one of the team we just talked about, because you have a lot of depth at wide receiver. I think you should trade for like one of those top tier guys, whereas there are other teams that have top tier guys but not the depth. I think that could make sense. Yeah, I think that's all we got to say about that team. So congratulations on 3-0. I still think there's a decent way to go, and I would not consider yourself safe or like playoff bound at all. I'm sure you're not, but I think there's still some work to be done on that team personally. The next game was between Team the Banditos versus Professor S. The Banditos loss goes to 0-3. Lamar Jackson, only 14 points, has to be incredibly disappointing. That's a guy you probably got early rounds and you expected to get you a ton of points. His arm does not look good. I have Hollywood Brown. I'm not going to play him again. We'll talk about that with the team that has Hollywood. Lamar his arm just doesn't look good. It kind of looks like 2 years ago when people were questioning his arm strength and accuracy. He only had 97 yards passing today, lost the ball on the ground, fumble. I don't know what to say. You still go with him for sure. I mean, I'm not questioning Lamar. I actually think he's going to have a huge bounce back. I'm probably going to try and trade him for him in my league. But just to the why are you 0-3, I would have to imagine Lamar being part of that, especially because this week, if he really gave you a great game, he could have saved the game for you, although it would have taken a really good game. What else about the 0-3 team? Running back situations, surprised we had to start Gaskin there. He gave you a pretty good week, but I'm sure that's not... He got 22 carries also, but not like a stellar guy, so I wouldn't think that anyone would want him to be a weekly starter. Gage, I get the start without Julio, but also don't really love that situation. He only got you 4 points. Nyheim Hines got you 10.5 points, so not awful, but I hate Nyheim Hines. So it's just... I swear, I usually wait a really long time to Dunchain teams. I really do. But now Goddard's also hurt for you. I gotta get my second Dunchain of the season. And I think this is going to be the only Dunchain for another few weeks, if I do keep doing them. Because I really am not... I don't give Dunchains out too easily. But, unfortunately, to the Banditos, Dunchain. At 0-3 in that situation at running back, and flex and depth, it's Dunchain time. I'm sorry to say it. I truly am sorry to say it. The other team is another flip side team, another 0-3 team losing to a team that became 3-0. Professor S, 3-0. Kamara is the man. He's the GOAT. He's incredible. He is maybe going to be the top running back in fantasy this year, especially with CMC's injury. He makes your team 10 times better than it would be, obviously, without him. The rest of the team, to me, is like good, but it's not great at all. Mixon just continues to be disappointing. If you could get value for him, if anyone's still valuing him as a RB1 or even RB2, I would take that value. If not, you have to keep starting him just because the volume's there, and that team's going to improve as Burrow continues to like get comfortable and they figure out their offense. So it's not panic button unless you expect him to be an RB1, then it's panic button. But if you're like okay with him giving you decent, he's in your flex, so I'm assuming that kind of means that you're not the most confident unless it was like an organizational thing. The bad news for you, Carson's injured, probably going to be out next game. I think he'll probably only miss one game based on what I'm hearing. The other highlights for this team there's not much. It's a pretty safe team. It's like a pretty just solid team all around with probably the best fantasy guy in fantasy to make you great. If I were giving the rankings right now, because it's so easy to give recaps, because I just give opinions based off like what you see. Whereas like if we were doing like a preseason draft recap, which I don't think I did for this league, I think I did for other leagues, then it's, you're guessing and you'll be wrong on half of them or whatever. So it's easy for me to always look back. So I should be careful. I should be careful like with that because I don't want to, come up overconfident. But what I would say is like if I were to be giving a preseason ranking of this team, like this team would probably out of the 10 be like 5 or 6. Like I think it's just like an average team that could make a push for the playoffs and really strong start to the season to be 3-0. But for me, it's not one of the strongest teams in the leagues. I think that both the 3-0 teams are not as good as the 2-1 and some even 1-2 teams that I'm seeing. If I'm this team, I know Deshaun only got 18.5 points. Ben got 22, so you made the right call this week. I would go Deshaun moving forward. I think Deshaun's a better fantasy quarterback by at least one tier over Big Ben. So that's just my own thoughts, and I think it would bring your team a little bit to a better level. But again, just my perspective. The next game was one of those that you love to watch and you love to pay attention to, but you hate to see one of these teams lose because these are the two top scorers in the league, so very unfair that one had to lose. The winner was the team I can't pronounce. I'm just going to start doing TBD, I think. I'll just say TBD because that's the actual team name. So for Team TBD, 193 to 191 win over straight knockout. TBD goes to 2-1. Wait, did I mess that up? No, sorry. TBD, I'm mixing up my notes from last week. Okay, so TBD goes to 2-1 with a really, really close win over Team Straight Knockout. So for TBD, you got everyone going really in this game except for I'm getting mixed up. Hold on. Okay, no. So the story with this is Lockett, stud, Josh Allen, stud. Josh Allen, this is one of the ones I was wrong about. I didn't think that he'd be as much of a study as he is, but he's clearly an every week starter, QB1. What he's able to contribute through the air and, on the ground is incredibly impressive. The disappointment here is twofold. First, and you won, so I guess not overly disappointing, but twofold. Josh Jacobs, disappointing week. I would totally forget about that. I think he's focal point of an offense that's going to do enough to get him points. So that's great. The real concern here is in Hollywood. Marquise Brown. I have him on my team too. So this is a really tough situation because here you have a guy who gets targets, doesn't kill it with targets, but gets enough targets to do damage because he's a big play threat. And he had 2 plays tonight that I'm sure you were watching that should have been touchdowns. He should have really had 20 plus points, but Lamar is just missing him on these balls, and it's so frustrating. So the question is, what do you do? And the answer is, I think you kind of have to bench him for a little bit. As long as you feel confident enough in your other options, probably Melvin Gordon. I think we have to take our foot off the pedal with Marquise Brown until he proves it. I still think he's a great option this year. He was my steal of the draft opinion after the draft, and I still think he's going to be a great value. But Very, very frustrating to see what he did. Good news for you is that Lockett totally picked it up. Lockett and Josh Allen totally picked up the slack for you. Eckler also had a very solid week. So you do go to 2-1, and obviously you're pretty happy about that. You had a really solid week, but this team could be really scary if you get contributions from everyone, and the frustration is in Josh Jacobs and Hollywood right now. Whereas Team Straight Knockout goes to 1-2, only getting a full 191 points, but and only losing by 2 points. Very, very frustrating. This is a team that got production from basically everyone except Reed. But now that you got Kittle coming back, you don't really need to worry about that tight end position. But the Reed injury did cost you this week. He likely would have given you enough to get the win. So that's, of course, really, really frustrating. Then you got Lazard, who was an unbelievable start. I actually feel like this team deserved the win more than anyone because the scrappy plays you made with McKinnon based on injury, Lazard based on Devontae's injury, which was a risky play. Thielen didn't even give you that much. You were able to recover that with Gallup. Like, the guys who gave you the production were fantastic. The only question mark that did cost you the week, that was a massive question mark, was playing Golden Tate. I'm sure you don't need to hear anything from me. I'm sure you already know this, but that is a very surprising play. That Giants team is tied with my Jets. And yeah, if you ever like this guy, if I'm ever mean to any of you through this recap, not obviously on a personal level, but if I'm ever saying anything bad about your team, just know I'm a Jets fan. So I'm suffering over here, and I'm getting everything this is me just deflecting basically, because I'm just trying to make other people feel pain as well, like I do. So with that being said, outside of my New York Jets, the worst team in the NFL is the Giants. And at the wide receiver position, Golden Tate, there are 3 guys who could get the ball and a tight end who could get the ball. So Golden Tate's probably on that list, 3rd, maybe 4th, but probably 3rd. And that's on a bad team. Sometimes you don't even want a second option on a decent team. You have a 3rd option on a bad team, and you went with that start over both Leonard Fournette and Sony Michel. I would have told you go with Fournette or Michel. I probably would have said they're even, in my opinion. If you went Fournette, he wouldn't have gotten you anything. It would have actually been a bad start. So I just want to be fair and say what I actually would have said. But if you went with Michel, he turned 9 carries into 117 yards. He also caught 2 balls for 23 yards, so he got 21 points. That would have been enough for the win. Obviously, hindsight's 20/20, but I just would not go with Golden Tate in any situation moving forward. Totally not reliable. And unfortunately, something like that cost you this week. But again, this team's 1-2. But when you're looking at the team, it's a pretty strong team, especially now that you're going to be getting Devontae back and Kittle back. So I think things are looking up for this team. I think this team's on the same level as those 3-0 teams, honestly. Maybe not better, but right on that same level. So really tough loss, definitely a frustrating one. But the good news for you is that you have a good team, and it's very early. It's only 3 weeks in. So with that is the recap. Again, a lot of opinions, a lot of talking. My throat hurts. But I just wanted to say thank you again for listening. I enjoy watching this league. I like the scoring. It's a lot different than anything I've seen in the way that some folks, I guess not a lot different, but it's different in that quarterbacks, have been really banking on getting a lot of points in your league. And there's always competitive games, and I feel like the league is fairly even, especially those top 8 teams. I gave my opinion that those bottom 2 teams are done chained, but I think out of those 8 teams, really any of them can make it. I think it's interesting that the 3-0 teams, in my opinion, are actually more on the bottom of that 8 than the top. And so I think this is going to be a really exciting season for you all. I wish you all the best of luck. This one went really long, 30 minutes, 28 minutes. Wow, that's long. But yeah, wish everyone the best. Good luck week 4 and forward, and maybe I'll see you again, maybe I won't, but either way, have a fun season. Bye.